Hello guys, it's Kenny once again. Today I'll be doing something differently. I've got feedback from some of you asking that I should do a proper course, prepare a proper course on Python. Because you guys find some of these explanations difficult to grasp. That is those videos that I have done already. And you say that you are beginners, and some of you absolute beginners, right? And so I have decided to use a scheme of work so that with that we're able to I am able to teach you Python from scratch. So you learn the basics of Python, and from there you get yourself to a point where you can build small projects, right? So I'm going to share my screen, and together we'll look at the scheme of work that I have, the syllabus that we'll be using, and it's going to come in a series of videos. Okay, guys, let's have a look at it. So I'm just going to share my screen. Right. So we can see here training in Python, knowing Python. The first lesson I've called the basics. So we'll go through all these. I have used lessons here, not that I'm going to have in one video. I'm going to have lesson 1 only in one video. No, I would have all these in this video, and then in another video this will come, and in another video this will come. So all together, to get yourself to a point where you can say, oh yeah, I am a programmer, a Python programmer. We will go through all these major topics that I have numbered here. Okay, so guys, let's take the first for today. Yeah, I'm going to leave this scheme on my website, so you can download that and use the scheme to follow, as we progress in these lessons. So that's www.thetutoraid.com.ng. So if you are new to Python, I think that I have what will help you a lot in becoming sufficiently knowledgeable in Python. So that's it, guys. Let's start. The basics. I'm not going to, I have Python installed already on my system, okay? So I'm not going to go through the installation process, but I think that you can find lessons online or use Google to get yourself information about how to install Python. But you can go to the site, python.org. python.org, right? And let's take /downloads. So you get to the site and you pick the one that you want. This latest edition here is 3.10. So I'll click that, it downloads. It's going to download an executable, right? So you click on it and you follow the instructions, the step-by-step process of installing Python on your machine. Now, I would advise that you install Python globally on your computer. So you would find a checkbox that would ask whether you wish to set the path variable for Python. Please check that check the checkbox, and that will install Python globally, right, on your machine. Then I will simply go to, now to actually check if Python has been installed on your machine, I will go to command prompt and simply have Python. So I have Python 3.8.2 installed here. Okay, so that's it, guys. And secondly, we need an IDE, an integrated development environment. I use Pycharm. I don't know, I just have this soft spot for Pycharm. And that's what you can see here. It's that piece of software that enables us to type our code, and we are also able to run or execute our code all in one place, right? So I'm using Pycharm. So you can also get Pycharm by going to, I'm just going to try to download Pycharm. So I would say here on Google, on this Google page, download, install Pycharm. So it takes us to a site called jetbrains.com. So click on this first, jetbrains.com, and you follow the instructions for installing Pycharm. Now, there are two versions of Pycharm, the community edition and the professional edition. Professional edition comes with many more features than you have in the community version, but you have to pay for it, okay? But I need something free, so that's why I installed the community edition on my system, my computer, right? So that's what I would ask that you also install, just as a developer who just wants to practice with Python. So that's that. So just community, and you click download. That helps. It's an executable file. So it installs it installs Pycharm on your computer. So you can simply open Pycharm, create your project. So let's say I have Pycharm here. Let me just close all this. So something like this, when I'm first accessing Pycharm, I'll click on File. Just for the sake of what we want to do here, guys, I'm just going to say New Project, Python project, or let me say Python for beginners. Okay. Then, no, just, okay, this should just be okay. So I'm going to take this window. It's loading my project. Just going to close this. So guys, let's have a look again at the lessons for today. Installing the IDE, Pycharm IDE, and then also installing Python itself. So please guys, I encourage us to download and install Python first. The latest edition, as we've seen now, is 3.10. And afterwards, download and install Pycharm. Okay. Well, it's taking quite some time. All right. Okay, guys, I'll just leave that running. But I'm also using the IDE that comes with Python itself, right? So I will just use that for this first lesson until this. Okay. All right. So I think our project is ready. So I'm just going to take all this off. Take all this. I'm going to retain my main method and take all this. Just clear this, clear this. Okay. All right, guys. So I have my first file here, but I don't want to use this the file that has the main method, right? So I'm just going to create a new file. Simply have this new Python file and call this first lesson.py. Hit the enter key, right? So guys, I think we're ready to go. And let's see, I suppose we've installed Python and Pycharm IDE. And let's just write our first program, a hello world program. Okay, so I'll just come here and use this syntax, print. In parentheses, I will have quotation marks. And so what do I want to show to, say, the user, or show to yourself on the screen, you know, in Python, in the console? I'm simply going to ask that I be shown hello world, just like this. Now you don't need to put, if you've used some other programming languages, you'll see that to end a statement or an expression, you need the semicolon, but that's not needed in Python. So I'm going to have this. I'm not going to run main. I'm just going to run this current file here, first lesson. So this gets printed, hello world. So that's the first Python program. I hope you guys can do this. So just you try, see if you can write and successfully run your first Python program. Okay, so with that done, let's look at something called comments or commenting. Okay. Now, let's assume that I'm working as part of a group, and some members of my group will need access to my program, my code. I need to tell them what specific blocks of code are for. So I need to state the purpose of those blocks of code without having the computer execute those lines. So those lines are meant for the human being and not for the computer to execute. So how do I include, the instruction or guidance to other human beings, right? Say my code developers, or even to myself. Let's say I wrote a piece of program based on some supernatural inspiration, and by the following morning, I must have forgotten how I reached the solution to the problem I had solved the night before. So it's good practice to just, have the comments. So I'm just going to say, now watch guys, hashtag this print method, print function here, outputs result of code execution to the console, for example. So the system will not use this line. It will simply just execute this. But someone, a human being who is reading this, understands what this second line is doing, right? Okay, so how did I get the computer to ignore this first line? I use the hashtag, the hash symbol there. This, just the shift and this way. So with that, it is ignored by the Python parser. So let's see, run first lesson, hello world. Now, if I did not include the hashtag and I run the code, first lesson, you see that there's an error. It raises an error there. This print function output results of code execution to the console. So this is not recognized as legal code. The syntax is invalid. It is not correct. So that's why there's an error there. So to do that, now again, guys, if you want to know if your code was successfully passed and was successfully interpreted, then this should not be a 1. The exit code should read 0. So let me have the hashtag back there and I run my program. See that the exit code now is 0. All right, guys, so that's the thing about commenting. Now, what if I have multiple lines? Blah, 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 just blah, 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 blah. Let me try to run the program. First lesson, now an error. Python doesn't recognize these characters here on these lines. Why? Okay, because it's meant to serve as a comment for a developer or a human being, not for Python to execute, right? So Python doesn't have it doesn't really have a specific symbol or command for multi-line commenting. So I could just do hashtag beginning each of those lines, hashtag, hashtag. But that could be a problem. Imagine that I had, say, 20 line comment. So I need to, use the hashtag on each of the lines. That's a lot of work. So what I can do here now, there's a workaround. I will just use 3 quotation marks at the beginning and 3 quotation marks ending. What this does is that it makes everything in between something that should be ignored by Python. The reason is this. When I create something, I put like groups, I put characters within quotes. I need to assign those characters to something called a variable. Now, if I do not do that, then it is largely ignored. All the characters in between the quotation marks, these 3 here opening and 3 closing, are simply ignored. So that's how we can implement multi-line commenting in Python. So now if I run my program, I see that there isn't any error. So hello world gets executed. Okay, so guys, let's not forget, how do I comment my code? How do I make a line or lines of code how do I make it something that the computer is simply going to ignore in execution? I would use, for a single line, the hashtag. But if I have multiple lines, then I'll use 3 quotation marks opening and 3 quotation marks closing, right? Okay, so that's that, guys. We'll take the next. Having looked at comments, let's say a thing or two about the print function in Python. I have already used this. So this outputs the result of something like computation to the console. And here it is shown, hello world. I could use the print function to output a string, characters within quotes, or even just numbers. So if I run this, I get 5. I could also print lists. Units of data like that are collected together in a bucket that is known in Python as list, but we'll come to list later in this course. So I'm going to have this as say 5, 7, 9, 10. And then let me run the code. You see that 5, 7, 9, 10 gets printed. Now I can, since it's a function, I can use a comma to separate two values. So I can say let me create a variable here. First part, Kene. Second part, Ade. So I'm just simply going to say first part, comma, second part, right? So let's see. So we see that a space is automatically created. So this here is something that the print method uses to work. That's called an argument. And it is separated from the other using a comma. And the second argument there is second part, which holds this value Ade. So the two of them gets printed to the console. Right. So we'll continue, guys. Now, speaking of data in Python, we can refer to data as literals. What's a literal? For me, it's basically the data that is stored in something called a variable. So I take data I create data in my source code. The source code is like everything that the computer is going to convert to, computer code, computer binary. Then it takes that value is taken and stored in something I like to think of as a container called a variable. Now that raw data itself is the literal. And in Python, we can think of four types of literals, right? There are 4 of them, and we're going to see each of them. So the first I would think of is the string literal, simply characters enclosed in quotation marks. So I could say my string, and I would have Kenena James, for instance. Now this entire thing is a string literal. the raw data that is stored in this variable called my string. Okay, so I can simply print my string. In Python, when I say print, when we use this print method, we're not saying, oh, send it to that machine that you use to get hard copies of something you've typed. No, it simply means just output it to the screen. Let's see it in the console. So if I print my string, we'll get Kenina James, just this way. Okay. All right. Now let's look at another type of string, another type of literal, the number. Number. So I'll just call this 12. And let me say my number. Then I'll have my number printed to console. And if I run this, okay, so if I run my number, I have 12. So we have string literals and then we have number literals. We also have these, we have Boolean literals, simply true, false values. They are binaries, true or false. So I'll just call this, say, my bool, and I'm simply going to say true. And if I print my bool, I see what I have. I see what I have here. So let's run this. True. All right, guys, I think I'll take a break here. I'll then return to complete this first part of our lesson. So see you guys in my very next video. Oh, yeah, I said I was going to talk about for. So the non value. In Python, there is a special literal called just none. And the none is what is returned by for example, a void function. A function that doesn't return anything automatically returns none, which is like the equivalent of null in Python. Okay, so if I print the none value, I should get what there? I'm simply going to get none. So this is a type of special literal. All right, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.